you're like me and you've grown up in church, then I'm sure you know the story of the prodigal son. In Luke chapter 15, Jesus tells the parable of a young man who wanted to live his own life. So he went to see his father to ask for his share of his inheritance. The father gives it to him, and the son goes off to a new country to live his own life. And in this new country, he squanders the fortune that he's been given. And when it's all gone, the money, the friends, everything that he had, a famine strikes the land, and he needs to find a job. So the only job he can find is feeding some pigs. And it's whilst feeding these pigs that he looks at his situation and he says to himself, even the servants in my father's house are better off than me. So he hatches a plan, and he says to himself, I will go home and I will ask my father for a job as a servant, for I'm no longer worthy to be called his son. And that's what he does. He gathers his things and he goes off, returns to his country, and he goes to see his father. And he's greeted with celebration, with joy, with rejoicing. And as the father says, he who was lost has now been found. We all know the story. And I was reading it again recently, and there were two things that really jumped out at me. The first is the attitude of the father. The Bible tells us that the father saw the son coming from a long way off. And when he saw him coming, he ran towards him and he embraced him and he kissed him. And the second thing is the attitude of the older son. The older son who had stayed behind, who had faithfully continued to work for his father, who had taken up the slack where the younger son had left things hanging. The older son is shocked and is indignant at how the father could celebrate the return of such an unworthy son, a son who'd squandered his fortune in bad living. And so often, the attitude of that older son can be our attitude. When we find ourselves far from the Lord and we desire to come back to him, there's something in us that tells us, you are not worthy. You have gone too far. Have you seen the greatness of your sin? How can you be accepted again? And in sharp contrast to that, we have the attitude of the father, who saw his son coming from a long way off, who didn't wait for him to arrive, who didn't wait for him to finish his speech, but ran towards him to meet him. And you might be far today from what you once knew. You might be far from Jesus. It may have been a long time since you've spoken to him. But if you have that desire in your heart to come back to him, don't let that little voice that wants to disqualify you, that wants to tell you, have you seen what you've done? Don't let that stop you. But know that the Father is waiting. He's looking for you. And when he sees you coming towards him, he will come towards you and he will embrace you and he will welcome you home. Don't delay. The Father is waiting.